we begin with a look at the European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act. Now, this act follows a risk-based approach. It has, some AI systems banned based on how it is ranked. It becomes law in May or June of this year. By 2025, general purpose rules should apply, and by 2026, the law should be fully enforceable. What does it mean for companies in the AI space like Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, and the likes? Also, can this law be fully implemented? We're very happy to have Associate Professor of Law, Gianclaudio Malgieri, which is focused on digital technology at the Leiden University in the Netherlands, where they have that department. He's also the author of a book titled Vulnerability and Data Protection Law, and he joins us from Leiden. Professor, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So I guess the EU got this act first, ahead of the US. Was the speed driven by fear or recognizing opportunity?
Hello, and thank you for this question. I hope you hear me well.
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. So, yeah, I think it was not fear to drive European Union, but was, of course, to see the risks that the AI systems are producing and to act timely. We shouldn't wait that damages are already produced before regulating AI. And of course, AI has immense potentials and risks for democracy. Think about deepfake, generative AI, content moderation, risks of AI. They have risk for health and safety if they drive critical infrastructures that might create problems. They have risks for discrimination if they are used in school or on the workplace, or if they're used at borders. So I see that regulating AI was a way to limit the risk, but also to give predictability. We have many laws before the AI Act that might already block something. The European Union is saying, I want that all AI systems know exactly what is forbidden and what is allowed, so that it's better and clearer to operate in this business in Europe. So I think it was not fear, it was an opportunity, it was the way to protect people, but also to give predictability and foreseeability to businesses that operate in the system. Let's see if other systems will follow Europe. I hope they will.
Thank you so much for that very effective breakdown there. Now, the risk-based approach for ranking AI, how effective is that? And, how would the EU actually implement a ban on some of the really high-risk ones, like the racial rankings and scanning and so on and so forth, so facial scans and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's important to remind, as you said, that there are three levels of risk. There are some AI systems that are considered at an unacceptable level of risk, and they are prohibited. These include, for example, social scoring, so giving a scoring to all citizens on the basis of their behavior through AI. It includes emotion recognition in the education or employment, so to recognize emotion of students or workers to assess their performance. It includes also the AI systems used by the police for real-time mass detection of publicly accessible areas like a square, or for detection of crimes, etc. And also the exploitation of vulnerabilities, for example, manipulation, dark patterns through AI. These are forbidden. How this ban will be enforced? There will be authorities in every European member state that will check if AI systems like these are commercialized and used. And there are very high sanctions if this ban is violated. There are other AI systems that are not considered at this very, very high level of risk, but they are considered anyway risky. And they include, for example, credit scoring, so giving a scoring to customers of banks, of insurances for their credit liability, credit worthiness, but also for example, scoring students and scoring in general workers just through AI, or AI used for social welfare. So, for example, to decide who should receive special services from the state. And if an artificial intelligence is going to decide, these are considered high risk. They are not forbidden, this other category of AI systems, but there are some very important rules to be followed. Transparency about the system, but also clear rules about governance of data, training data, avoiding discrimination and bias. So just very rapidly to answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Now, you mentioned transparency a moment ago. OpenAI's ChatGPT is not on that high-risk category, but you did, as you just mentioned, the fact that it's still, on the other levels. The Act has called for companies like that to be more transparent with the authorities. What does that transparency mean? How can that be implemented?
So the example of OpenAI and ChatGPT is very interesting because during the process of discussion and approval of the law, special articles for generative AI were added in the AI Act. So now the AI Act has 3-4 special articles for generative AI saying that in general, there should be transparency about how the system is trained, how the system works, what are the possible effects. Then some generative AI systems that might be considered more powerful or more impactful are considered high-risk generative AI, so they have systemic risk. And for these ones, there should be even a risk assessment. So it means that OpenAI and other businesses will need to do an analysis of the possible implications and impacts of these AI systems on human rights, fundamental rights, democracy, etc. So it's a list of information for understanding the logic of the algorithm, the purpose, which data were used for training it, what are the limits. For example, that ChatGPT has some ethical limits. ChatGPT cannot give an opinion on something, cannot suggest illegal acts. So it's all about informing the authorities, informing the state on how the risks that ChatGPT is producing for people, for society, etc., are mitigated. What are the safeguards in place? We will see if this is effective or not, but I hope it will be.
Very, very robust act here. Do you expect regulation from the US and Asia to mirror what the European Union has put forward?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Of course, we don't know, but we can see that there are already movements, for example, at the G7 plus to have a global convergence on AI regulation. So the AI Act is a very robust and advanced law, as you said. I'm not expecting that it will be echoed and will be copied so strictly beyond Europe. We have the example of data protection. So the general data protection regulation in Europe was an inspiration for Asia, for many Asian countries like India, Indonesia. China has also a data protection law, and the state had something. They are trying to have federal law. For AI will not be the same, I think, but it will have an impact anyway. So we know that in the States we have some standards for public administration uses of AI because President Biden released an executive order. So this is something, and the executive order is in line with the principles of the AI Act. In Asia, we see that some countries want to go totally unregulated. India is not going to regulate AI, we know. China has some rules that might be driven from the data protection rule. So it's very difficult to say, but there will be an impact. I'm sure that at the level of UN, OECD, and G7 plus G20, there will be an impact of the AI, but will not be as robust as Europe. This is just my crystal ball prediction, but I don't know.
Thank you so much for that. Now, Professor, when it comes to technology, it's been said that regulation has always lagged behind innovation. Do you think governments around the world, as you've mentioned, what's going on in Asia, North America, Europe, and so on, can governments around the world successfully regulate artificial intelligence, because it's only going to get more advanced from here on?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, this is a very complex challenge. I just told you before about how the release of ChatGPT-3 changed the process of negotiation and approval of the European AI Act. And it was possible just because the law was not yet approved. What if the law, the AI Act in Europe, had already been approved, and then ChatGPT would just be published and everyone would know the risks? So of course we cannot predict where innovation will go, and it's so that's why we need some laws that have that are principle based and have this risk flexibility. So this is important. I'm not sure that all countries will manage to cope with this challenge. I think we will have this narrative of pure innovation and that we should never block innovation, etc., that will limit the regulation. But I'm confident that some steps are being taken, not just in Europe. So I think if we set important principles of things that we don't want that AI does, for example, we don't want that AI can decide on who is a good citizen or not. We don't want that AI can decide the emotions of students. We don't want that AI manipulate our mind. We put this on a clear list of things that can be done or cannot be done. So just to say, it's an open challenge. We will see.
Indeed. I have to get your thoughts on jobs. There's been there's a wide spectrum on how jobs will be impacted by artificial intelligence. Some say jobs will be lost. Others say it will make mankind more productive. Where do you fall within that spectrum of how jobs will be affected?
Yeah, I would suggest an interesting book written by a dear friend and colleague, Frank Pasquale. He published 2 years ago this book called The New Laws of Robotics that addresses this issue. So will the implementation of AI reduce the jobs and increase unemployment, or the other way around? Of course, this is also something we are not yet sure about. But I think it's important to say that AI is also solving a lot of repetitive actions. And so actually it will allow employees to work on more sophisticated actions, more human control, etc. So just to say, it's important to regulate AI also because the regulations produce new jobs. Just to make an example, the AI Act is imposing human oversight. So actually it means that there will be people that we need to look at what AI does, or also is producing a duty to do fundamental rights impact assessment. And this is creating new jobs in terms of compliance, in terms of engineering, in terms of computer science and lawyers. So of course there's a risk that the more humble jobs might be partially substituted, but there's also a need that AI is supervised by humans, and for supervised AI we need people working. So there will be a shift, but it's not something that we cannot govern. We should govern this, and we should understand how to make unemployed people specialize in order to interact with technologies and help AI to work.
Thank you for that, Professor. You also mentioned students. What about its impact on education? Will it make students lazy, or do you think it's going to improve learning?
This is also a very key challenge. As you know, I teach, I have students, and I see that their way of addressing their own education has changed a lot just in these last 5 years. Now students ask questions to ChatGPT. Now students try to learn from ChatGPT. They don't read articles, they don't read books. They ask for these summaries to chatbot. Of course, and there's even more. We can imagine that students use platforms, apps that are gamified. And so there are some potential. There is something positive. If we see some apps, for example, that help for the engagement in learning, for example, learning a language. This is clear, for example, for learning language on, I don't know, I don't want to name app, but there are some famous apps that are built on AI to create a better experience. There is a risk, of course, I see as a teacher, as someone working in education, that students are more and more unable to manage complex long texts. This is something I see, and I think AI is contributing to that, and also this gamification of education, and it's of course good to have more accessible information, more images, more videos. But the fact that students now just tend to listen at podcasts or watch videos or just ask ChatGPT and don't read books, it's also might have an impact on their capability to work in the private sector or in the public sector in the future as mature workers that can deal with good elements. By the way, just to conclude, it's important that students know how to use AI and generative AI because they will use it also in their work as employees, as workers. So it's important that they start at school. So I'm not saying that they should not use ChatGPT. They should, but they should understand the limits and they should understand what is their added value in addition to chatbot.
Professor, that's a very excellent point that you made, and thank you so much for talking about the aversion to longer text and how things are being shown, because we're seeing it, here in Nigeria as well. Does that mean, if your last point you wanted to add about students needing to learn about AI and so on, does that shift the jobs of the future? Will that mean we'll see more students leaving, law or medicine and focusing more on software engineering and, programming of large language models and so on? Will that shift what they learn?
Partially, we will see that the market will push for these professions on designers, so I agree. But also those roles can be actually automated. You know that now you can even have a generative software, so like software that generate other softwares. So even the role of computer scientists can be automated in a way. So I think it's important. I don't think that students would leave the law faculties or medicine faculties because it will be important to have human capabilities interacting with AI. So we will need doctors. Doctors will need to interpret what the machine does. Doctors will need to check if the machine is accurate, and doctors will need to test the new machines, the new AI systems to patients. So I think, and the lawyers is the same. Lawyers have an important role in giving human interaction with clients. And human interaction has also a psychological component that AI cannot surrogate. So I think that the contact with customers, with patients, with clients, with humans in general will be still held by humans. So I think this is a challenge. We have to learn technologies, sure, but we also have to learn how to keep the human contact with people and also the human capabilities. Machine are very good for specific purposes, but machine for now cannot have a broad view on contexts. Humans can. So I think we should treasure the human capabilities. It's a challenge for universities. We are trying to cope with those challenges.
Professor Malgieri, this has been a very robust conversation. We thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and of course to remind our viewers that you also have a book, Vulnerability and Data Protection Law. Thank you so much for joining us, Associate Professor at the Leiden University in the Netherlands.